Got the old principal from Thayer Central on here today.
9:30. We're going to wait just another minute or two while we wait for other people to jump on. We'll get started in just a minute. I think you probably all know who I am, but if you don't, I'm Jeremy Henniger. I'm the Director of Statewide Assessment for the Department of Education. Welcome. I want to first thank everybody that helped me put this together today. The people within the department and NWA and others for giving feedback and providing useful information for us. For today, if you want to type in questions as we go, that's fine. We're going to kind of wait till the end of the presentation to answer questions, because I think it'll be more efficient that way. In some cases, Trudy might respond or answer the questions as we go along. But other than that, we have about an hour's worth of content today, so we are not going to go all the way to 12:30 unless you guys have so many questions that, well, that'd be about 2 hours worth of questions. So I don't foresee that happening, but you never know. So we'll get through that, and then we'll answer as many questions as you have. We'll stay on as long as we need to. So with that being said, we'll kind of get started. So I think level setting is probably pretty important, right? So we haven't put out a ton of information really since October of 19, which seems like 50 years ago or something like that. So, you know, we announced at the time the transition to the through-year adaptive assessment model. At the time, I added a lot of context setting and information about the reason for the change and where all of that came from. It was part of a larger presentation about assessment at the time, but you know, we tried to set up the background and everything. I'm not going to rehash all of that today. Really, what I want to do is kind of give this shortened version of what through-year adaptive is, and then kind of reset the stage and the way forward from here and where we are in this transition, because that is definitely a different place than when we started. So the intention is that you don't need to go back to that old recording. You're certainly more than welcome to, if you want to know more about that or more about the reasons why we had that we believe that we're setting up for this transition. But today should be a standalone for you and for anybody else that you want to share this information with. You know, essentially at the time, what we were talking about is Nscas adaptive through-year model, right? Is simply a hybrid of map growth and Nscas summative. I say simply, and that's simply put, but it's way more complex than that. You're going to see, you're going to see references to Nscas innovation and those types of things. It's probably important to note for everybody that this is something that nobody else has done before. And so we knew at the time that there was going to be the need to kind of find our way forward. We might have to stop, readjust, those types of things. But ultimately, our intention is to find a better way to go forward, a more balanced way to go forward, and trying to meet the needs of multiple stakeholders. And I hope when we finally get there, you see that we can deliver on all the promises we made. With all of that being said, obviously, the world changed quite a bit. About 5 months after we announced this transition is when the pandemic hit. Just a quick note for all of you, thank you for all that you're doing in this pandemic. I can't imagine wearing a mask every day. I'm glad that I have teachers and educators all over the country that are doing this, but I think especially a call out to Nebraska educators. I think Nebraska educators have gone above and beyond in classrooms and buildings, district personnel helping out all over the place and doing great things to keep our kids moving forward. And so I can't thank all of you that have done that work enough. Obviously, the transition to remote learning last spring and the suspension of the 2020 assessments had impacts on the transition and what we were doing. Since March of 2020, we've been really trying to figure out how we move forward from there. And one of the big pieces of that was ultimately a decision to move forward toward the transition as opposed to backwards into the previous system. And that was intentionally made. We still think that was the right answer. And we think that we've tried to make concessions in this pandemic year to try to move us forward, but also be responsive to the needs of schools and students, educators across the state. I think it's also probably really important for us to acknowledge that the amount of change and the pace of change has been kind of intense over the last couple of years. We do understand that. We've heard those the concerns from the field in that area. The intention really is to try to bring some stability to this as we get to this transition. I know it's going to not feel like that, but we're trying to simplify the system and make it so it is ultimately less testing for the majority of students in the state. I know that that's hard to see with all of the changes going on right now, but hopefully that will be realized as well. So I do want to acknowledge that level of change that's going on. Obviously, the pandemic didn't help in that area either. So just a really quick, this is kind of the agenda with what I'm going to cover really quick. Like I said, about an hour's worth of content today. Kind of going, one of the main things we're doing is resetting the timeline, right? How do we move forward to this transition so that you have that? Presentation goals today, just provide that high level overview once again of through-year adaptive. So if you need a refresher or if you didn't see this information in the past, you know what that is and where we're going. Reestablish the timeline. We have kind of the pieces for this year and the next couple of years put together for you so you can see kind of that path forward. Review plans for ongoing feedback and communication. We had a stakeholder advisory committee less than 2 weeks ago now, and we tried to listen to that as we always do and respond to that. So we had some communication goals at the time. We've kind of adjusted those to hopefully meet your needs, and so we'll review those. So also take a look at the ongoing input methods and research needed to make the transition. Also ultimately to provide some reassurance about where we're going and that you're going to get the information that you need. I know that I can't guarantee those, that you're going to be reassured, but that's one of my goals today is to provide some of that. We know educators across the state have lots of questions, and I'm going to warn you right now, we don't have all the answers today, but what we're hoping is that today marks a shift and that we establish this new timeline and a new steady cadence to deliver regular updates and answers to questions about the through-year transition. We also hope to show how we will be continually asking for feedback and providing opportunities for feedback for Nebraska educators and Nebraska educators to provide input for the decisions that still have to be made. So we're going to start with this high-level overview of through-year adaptive. Go back just a little bit and kind of pick up some of these pieces I think are probably important for context. Back when we established NSCAS, so the Nebraska Student-Centered Assessment System, we really had the goal of creating a more student-centered, obviously the name, assessment system, right? Something that was more balanced. We knew that we were going to be in a process of evolution in the partnership with NWA of making the system more relevant for teachers and educators. That is our intention, and to take really the best of multiple worlds and try to put them together in a cohesive system. Feedback from educators all along has been what we've been basing our decisions on and where we're going, and we will continue to do that as we move forward. So the system is really continuing to evolve. Hopefully, you're going to see where we're going, and then we're going to be steady for a while after that. So really, these are some of the goals of the 3-year adaptive assessment model that we're trying to get to. Provide more useful data throughout the year, right, to guide instruction. So take what's happening with MAP and retaining that as we MAP growth and retaining that as we go forward. Reinforce assessment as an instructional tool. I think too often people were the primary purpose of summative assessment is not as an instructional tool, but assessment is not a bad thing. We want to make that useful and put the focus of those assessments on that instructional information that's needed. Support learning in context. Support multiple opportunities to really have for students to showcase what they know and how they're growing. To decrease overall testing time and to utilize the strengths of Nsgas general, summative, and MAP growth, right? Try to get the best of both into one kind of seamless system. I probably should also just talk about this really quickly. Aquest tenant change. So the State Board of Education made some changes. This change in the assessment tenant was brought about by stakeholder feedback. I don't know about you, but I was never really comfortable with assessment having a tenant in Aquest, just that idea of that assessment was so important. So I do really like this change. Like I said, we had stakeholder feedback that brought about this change in name. I think it does a better job of showcasing what this tenant should be about. And so student achievement and growth really replaces the assessment tenant. And it's more than just a name change, in my opinion. It's kind of a philosophical change. A lot of the pieces are the same, right? But I think that it does a much better job of communicating the intention as we go forward. So let's talk about that adaptive 3-year model, right? And so you've probably seen this graphic before or similar graphics before. And so really that underlying notion of there's formative assessment all year long, and then interim assessments a few times a year. And then hopefully the intention is to get the summative scores from those interim assessment sessions. And so we'll go into more information about that. And really, I can't stress this enough. The intention is to have 3 or multiple interim assessments, not multiple summative sessions, right? The taking interim work and pulling that summative information out. As always, trying to make sure that we are wrapping professional learning around this as we go forward. And you kind of see this as we go forward, as we kind of flesh some of this out again. I don't know about you, but adaptive 3-year model is a mouthful to say every time. We started abbreviating it that 3-year adaptive, or TYA. You'll see that sometimes as well. But really, we probably had to name it differently, right? So if one thing that I've ever learned in my time at the department is naming things is really hard. And so we tried to keep this as simple as possible. So Nsgas growth, the name is intentional. The new assessment model brings a greater emphasis to student growth. Hopefully the name connects to its origins of MAP growth and NSCAS summative. Ideally, everyone will focus on growth and moving students forward instead of focusing on that single achievement level determination. But really, the intention is to hearken to what we want it to be, is about growth and about continuous information back to districts, to teachers, to classrooms, and students and parents as well, right? So just once again, that context of where we've been, the state has been helping provide access to MAP growth the last couple of years, since 2017. And then at the end of the year, we do Nsgas general. The districts have complete control over MAP growth, what grades they test, what contents they test, how often during the year they test, right? For context, just so people have these kind of numbers sitting around in their brain as we move forward, in ELA and math, right, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about Nsgas growth, for MAP growth in fall of 18-19, about 97% of the Nebraska 3rd through 8th graders participated in MAP growth in the fall, right? So almost 100% of our students, when you consider about 1% of the students probably wouldn't participate normally anyway. So 97% of the students back in the fall of the school year 18-19. That same year, about 83% of the 3rd through 8th grade students in math and reading participated in MAP growth in the winter, and about 73% participated in MAP growth in the spring, and then obviously also participated in Nsgas general. So almost 75% or 3/4 of our students were testing both MAP growth and Nsgas general at the end of the year. Where we're headed, right? So this is kind of the model that we're looking for Nsgas summative, or Nsgas growth, sorry. So in the fall, students would take Nsgas growth, ELA, and math grades 3 through 8. One of the big changes in between Nsgas growth and MAP growth is that those results are going to then inform the winter administration. So information will be pulled forward, right, from that previous administration to help figure out where the student needs to start as they move forward into the winter administration, and then again pulling information forward to the spring administration. So it's important to note that MAP growth was adaptive within each session, right? The intention is that this system, the Nsgas growth system, will be adaptive over the course of the year, not just within each administration. It's also probably important to note that students will repeatedly be brought back and have a chance to show what they know at grade level, because they've been receiving grade level content in the classroom oftentimes, and so they'll get a chance to show that they've grown in that way. But pretty quickly, we'll try to make sure we focus on that growth piece overall as students move through that. Also, right, as students take these assessments, ultimately we'll be able to use all the data from the year to determine proficiency at the end of the year. So we'll have a lot more data to determine that proficiency on. How that works is extremely complicated. Not all the decisions have been made on it. And quite frankly, we're gonna have educators come in and help us make decisions about what we decide to do, or how we decide to assign that proficiency or the level, the achievement level for students with that, because it's going to be very different, not nearly as straightforward as it's been in the past, in the previous kind of summative world. So some of the things that I just think it's important to know is that really the intention is to have a better version of map growth, right? So we have no intention of taking the information you're getting 3 times a year, if you're testing 3 times a year, away from you. We want to actually improve that information and improve the amount of information that you get back. One of the advantages of this system is that we can make sure there's more cohesion, that there's higher quality, and we can make sure that all of the items have the rigor we expect, but continues to be adaptive for students to try to figure out where they are and how to move them forward. So just kind of looking at the benefits, right, and we've covered these before. We'll kind of just cover them again generally, right? So it leverages the strengths of an interim assessment system to produce both growth, like I said, and proficiency information. So that's it does both things at the same time. Aligns to Nebraska standards really well. Everything that's in this the item bank has been checked for alignment and reviewed for alignment by Nebraska educators. Overall, it's going to streamline testing and increase coherence as we move forward. And helps inform the next steps, which you already know because most of you are using map growth and the information you get from that system really well. It's going to provide a longitudinal study because it's going to provide Writ Scores and access to NWA's national norms. So we'll be able to still use this assessment to compare to how we're doing nationally, which is a very useful thing to do occasionally. But we'll also have the Writ scale that we'll be able to see historically where students have been and where they continue to grow from. So as we move from one to the other, we'll be able to do that and have good information. Also, since this is ELA and math in grades 3 through 8, if districts want students to take map growth in early grades or in high school, that we should be able to look at their growth from map growth into Nsgas growth and then back to map growth again. That should be possible, and we plan on providing resources so that you can do that hopefully seamlessly, right? And I think one of the big things is, like I said, about 75% of our students were testing both interim and summative at the end of the year. It's going to take one of those away so we don't have to do both of them. In general, providing tools and information similar to what you've had for map growth, and then being able to move forward with that summative score. So we're going to kind of get into the pathway to Nsgas growth now. So how we see this going after the pandemic and all of these types of things have kind of interrupted that path. Tried to figure out how we move forward. So some of this I'll cover again about this year as we go forward, so you can see how it fits together. That being said, there's always potential speed bumps in the road. It's based on making sure we get the research that we need to move forward. And it's assuming that we don't have another pandemic or whatever the case may be as we move forward, right? So this is the current draft of where we're going. So 2021 time of transition, that top is a link to some of the information about this year. I bet somebody would put that link to the resources in the chat for me. It's basically, it gives a rundown of what's happening this year and what the phase 1 pilot is. And there's resources that you can share with others if you need to. But essentially, we said we're going to do this phase 1 pilot, and this was really a compromise of where we needed to be and how we get to move forward, right? So we said we were going to focus on moving forward. The administration at the time, the federal administration at the time, indicated that they were not likely to allow us just to not test this year. We still think that is the case, although the new administration hasn't come out exactly and told us everything. So about whether they're going to do what they're going to allow or not allow. So basically, this is a transitional test. It's not Nsgas general summative, and it's not Nsgas growth. It's really meant to get us to the next place we're going. It's a transition test, and so we shortened the test pretty significantly. It still does some of the research we missed out on last year, providing a link between map growth and Nsgas summative that we need. We still think we know we're going to still provide information back to the districts to provide you with some idea about where students would be summative wise. I think it's also important to remember that we're also providing Writ Scores. So this will be the first time we use really Nebraska's item bank to tied to that Writ Score. So if you want to compare your map growth data and the Writ scale on the phase 1 pilot, you're going to be able to see how close those are. Remember, those should not be identical because the students are not going to take them on the same day. And even if they did, there's some error within that as well, but they should be relatively close. And so we're going to provide that back to you. Like I said before, this is preliminary data. And so we're not going to, well, I think that's on the next slide anyway. And then for science, I don't talk about science a whole lot in here because this is really focused on ELA and math. But we are doing the summative science pilot or field test, not pilot, field test. That we weren't able to do last year. So hopefully we can move to an operational test next year. Remember that alternate is still available for ELA and math, and that the science alternate is also a field test. And your third year cohort students in high school will still be taking the Nsgas ACT or the Nsgas alternate if they qualify for that test. So that's really gets us to where we're going. Sorry. So that's a visual representation of where we're going. Sorry. Districts continue to make this year. Obviously, you continue to make your determination about how you're going to use map growth, how much you want to test. Those numbers were pretty interesting from this fall. We put out that report I think this last week about how many students were testing in the fall this year. Those numbers obviously had impacts because of COVID, because of remote learning and all of those types of things. But you're still in charge of that, right? So also important to probably remember, sorry, I'm going to go back, that because of the shortened nature of both the summative field test for science, ELA, and math, it should take most students less than an hour to finish those tests, right? So if I was scheduling, the majority of your students should finish in less than an hour for their ELA test, and less than an hour for math, and less than an hour for science. So we've tried to cut the recommendations for scheduling back, and most students should finish within those times to try to make it a little bit easier to get that testing done this spring. Just as a reminder, the results from this year, we are not intending, because the preliminary nature of these results, we are not planning to report any of these scores publicly or to families. So students will not get, and families will not get, an individual score report. Districts are going to receive individual results in a data file. There'll be no aggregation of that information. You will be able to aggregate it if you wish. If you want to look at certain groups of students, you would be able to do that fairly easy by sorting in those types of things within the spreadsheet file. You are going to get that Writ score that we talked about, and it is comparable to map growth information. You're also going to get an estimated achievement level. We say it's estimated because it's based on quite a bit less data because the shortened nature of it. But you will see an estimate of where students would be as far as developing an on-track or CCR, College and Career benchmark. The results are really not comparable to preceding years and should be interpreted with caution and context of other data sources. In general, we would encourage you to rely on more consistent measures, right, such as map growth or other common district assessments to inform teaching and learning. This will be another data point for you, but you should rely on those other data points more readily as you move forward throughout the year and through into next year. Okay, so this is 21-22, and this is partially operational, right? So this is where for next year where we're going. So in the fall, basically it'll be kind of business as usual for map growth. Districts are going to decide who's going to test, what grades, what content areas. You're going to make that decision in the fall, totally by yourselves. So that'll be pretty typical in the fall. In the winter, we are going to be doing an Nscas growth pilot for ELA and math. The intention is you would get data back from that almost immediately, like we intend. So it will be very much, the intention is to be very much like what we're doing right now for map growth. At the same time, if you want to do map growth during that time, that is up to you as a district. I could understand where you've never gotten the new reports for Nsgas growth. Some of you might rely and want to do testing in both of those areas for that time period. And we get that if you want to do that. As we get to the spring, Nsgas growth, so students that take the Nscas growth pilot in the winter, that information will feed through to the Nscas growth in spring. We'll also be doing Nscas summative operational, we hope, based on the field tests from this year. And then once again, districts will make decisions about how they want to do map growth during that time. You might find that you really like the reports and everything, the data that came to you from Nscas growth pilot, and that you don't want to, or you don't feel that you need to do both types of testing in the spring of that year, but that will be up to you and about what you're comfortable with. Not going to make determinations about that in any way. NDE will be paying for map growth for 3 through 8 for the school year. So we're covering that cost once again, and there's no intention not to do that in this year. So that's kind of what 21-22 looks like. The intended results of that. So the winter growth pilot provides within year growth. So we're going to be able to calculate a growth on the Writ scale from the winter to the spring. We are going to provide immediate returns of that preliminary Writ score. That does say pending spring 2021 linking study. That's, I can't say that enough, is all of this is based on the preceding work. Once again, we have to have solid results from this year to be able to do the things that we intend to do next year. We would be doing standard setting or setting cut scores for ELA and mathematics in the summer, right, of 22. That is a little bit different than we said originally. Originally, we said we didn't know if we would have to set cut scores and everything based on the fact that we had interrupted testing last year. We think we are going to have to do standard setting. That's probably for the best for ELA and mathematics, both for Nscas growth. So you're probably not going to get proficiency scores right till the end of the summer, because we'll have to do that standard setting over the course of the summer to figure out where those cuts are for the new test. And that caveat, once again, is research will inform results that can be provided, right? So we're not making promises as of today about what you're going to have, but we will be trying to nail that down and pin that down for you as we move forward. So then 2023, 22-23 should be fully operational. We'll be able to provide Nsgas growth, ELA and math throughout the year, Nsgas summative science at the end of the year. And districts will be able to access map growth science if you want to. That'll be a district choice once again as we move forward. My intention in this year is that we should be able to replace and kind of replace Nsgas growth. You should be able to get great information from that system. And so you wouldn't need to do map growth at that time. That's the intention. Obviously, we still have to prove that that's true and that you feel comfortable with that. So retaining the best of map growth. These next 3 slides are not new information. It's exactly what I told you back in 2019 in October. But I will kind of show you the details behind it after that. So the intention is Nsgas growth should take about the same amount of time per content, per administration as map growth. That you're going to be able to measure student growth irrespective of grade level within and across years. That is still true. Produce that Writ scale information in fall, winter, and spring. Provide that access to NWA norms so you can think about that in context of national, how we compare with those national norms, right? Be adaptive, accounting for differences in scope and sequence. So districts decide when they teach things. This system should still allow for that to happen because of the adaptive nature. Provide access to the learning continuum, and I would say a similar tool that will talk about ALDs. We'll get into that in a little bit. The system should support mobility a lot better than the current map growth system, right? So we should be able to follow students from district to district better, and those scores should be easier to access as we move forward. As far as retaining the best of Nscas summative, we're still going to be able to get that criterion referenced information. What those reports look like in fall, winter, and spring, we have not determined yet. We still have to decide what it looks like and how that information comes back to you. But we should be able to provide more grade level information as we move forward. We're working on some tools around the ALDs, the achievement level descriptors that should provide you better information instructionally. That's coming. And then multiple chances, once again, for students to show what they know and show that growth just besides one time at the end of the year. And the other part of this is Nebraska educators will continue to have a strong say in the new system. What all of the pieces that go into that work, it's one of the strengths of Nebraska and our assessment systems is that we make sure that Nebraska educators have a huge voice in that, and that will continue to be true as we move forward. How it's different, I think the biggest thing, once again, is that there shouldn't be a need to administer 2 tests in the spring. So that's great. It should feel like 3 interim tests going forward instead of a summative test at all. And processes will become standardized. And I know that's probably a little scary because that means you're giving up some control. I've heard some concerns about that, and I'm thankful that we're hearing those concerns so that we can try to make sure that we're addressing those the best we can. But there will be some standardization as we move forward. So but trust me that we are making sure that we're listening and trying to make sure educators Nebraska educators, people in the field have feedback and inform those decisions about how we make those decisions. I had somebody the other day when I was doing this tell me this is their favorite slide because this is what all of you want to say to me, but what about the details, right? So this doesn't give me any more details than you had back in 2019 in that way. And you're right, We owe you answers to your questions. Like I said, less than 2 weeks ago, we had an advisory group that emphasized just that, and that we need to do a better job of informing as we move forward. And so kind of show you where, how I'm trying to address those concerns that were voiced very strongly at that advisory group moving forward, and show you the plan as we go forward. So the first thing I thought I'd share with you is my decision-making, or our decision-making philosophy as we've moved through this. Trying to make a new system is always going to be difficult, and we learn things as we go along. My understanding of this system has definitely developed along with everybody else that's working on it, to be honest. And so really, as we make decisions, right, if we have choices, since we're taking and building a hybrid of both a summative and interim, these are the things that we have been prioritizing. If we have a decision that if it looks more like interim or more like summative, we are prioritizing interim. If we're trying to prioritize growth, what students and educators need, ease of use, and continuous improvement. So this is our philosophy. If we have a decision, we're trying to go this direction over and over again. That is our intention. And anytime we have that decision to make, trying to do that. That doesn't mean we can't consider all of these other pieces, right? We have to consider summative, accountability, security, policymakers, other stakeholders, and statutory requirements, the law, right? We have to consider those things. But as we're trying to balance things, we're trying to balance them towards the list on your left. And that interim, the growth, students, and centered, because we're trying to make it a student-centered assessment system, not just a summative assessment system like we've had in the past. We are trying to prioritize those things. So moving forward, this was an ask from that advisory group. So we are going to start having monthly advisory meetings. So that advisory group is going to start meeting on a monthly basis, assuming that they actually, will come in virtually and do that. We're going to pick topics around key areas each time. The next one is going to be about data and reporting specifically. That's what I can tell you for sure. That's what we've already decided that we're going to do that. And then we're going to follow that up after we have time. So a month from then, we're going to do another one of these, and those are going to be 30 to 60 minutes. Just like this kind of session today, and we will follow up with that. So we're going to get feedback from that advisory group. A month later, we'll come back and try to deliver those details to the greater educational community out there. So that is where we're going. Those will be recorded just like the one today. So if you're not able to join us for that live session, you'll be able to go back and catch up on those or share those with others in your district. So if you want to share snippets of those things or use those to inform others, that would be fine. We'll try to make sure that frequently asked questions gets updated to reflect the most current information. Definitely doing that. Examples and feedback opportunities. So trying to make sure that you understand where those opportunities are, and then trying to make sure that we're always, as we always do, try to make sure we have educator feedback as we move forward. This is really leading towards, so at Administrator Days, and I'll cover this in a minute, I guess, but at Administrator Days, we hope to have a good summary of all this information from the next several months to share with all administrators from across the state during that time, and additional resources as well for you. Some recorded pieces that go into some of the details around psychometrics, around test management of the system and those types of things to give those details. But we're not going to wait till Administrator Days to give you that information. We're going to do that all along the way up until we get there, so that you could continually feel like you're getting answers, right? So giving all the answers today was not possible. I don't have all the answers today, but we're going to keep forcing us to give you answers as we go down that path so that you continue to feel like you're getting information as we go. Just to be clear, these I wanted to just put these out there so you know about them. We have an assessment and accountability advisory group. That group meets about biannually, and then kind of at an ad hoc basis now in this kind of pandemic virtual world that we've been in. We put together an assessment thought leaders group, and that group is a smaller group, kind of a working group around through your adaptive specifically. So they've been involved for the last 2 years and will continue to be involved. We've also established content advisory boards. So teachers from all across the state, content experts from across the state have been involved in these 2 advisory boards. There's about 25 teachers in ELA and about 25 teachers in mathematics. Those teachers and educators are come in on a regular basis. They help us write items. They help us take a look at things that are content specific and give us feedback on those particular things, along with our content experts from the department as well. And so those content, anytime we get into content specific pieces, that group is often tapped to weigh in on those things. Obviously, annual test development, we bring in Nebraska teachers every year to do that. Content specific work, to write items, to review items, to be put in the bank, all of those types of things. Nebraska educators were highly involved in the achievement level descriptors that we currently use and any revisions to those. Teachers are always involved, educators are always involved in standards review and revision. And then just to let you know, we've already decided that this summer, because of the change from a more summative system to this Nsgas growth system that is supposed to be interim-like, right? That we need to review and probably update the accessibility manual. So we'll be bringing people together, content experts, special education experts, EL experts, together to review that accommodations or the accessibility manual and update those accommodations and linguistic supports, the universal supports as we move forward. So that's all updated for this kind of new system and new world that we're going to live in. One thing I should probably mention about standards review, when I talk about road speed bumps and things that could impact our timeline, we are in the department is in the midst of reviewing ELA standards. Math is coming up here in the next year. How much the standards change may have impacts on how we move forward. And so I don't know how much that is. Originally, we thought it was going to be minimal. We're not sure now how much those are going to impact. But we do have to keep that in mind as we move forward, that there are things outside of our control and assessment that may have impacts on how we move forward. Okay, so kind of go over some of the professional learning and communications pieces. I think it's really important to say for you to know what our plans are or how we're anticipating supporting you as we move forward. We know that you are, in many cases, the person that's going to answer questions within your district, within your ESU, and going to have the resources to answer those questions. And that's no easy task. And so we've been working hard to try to put pieces together so that you feel supported in that. So our communication plan, like I said, we're planning on continual updates up to administrator days, but administrator's days is still a big point for us to have a lot of materials ready for you for the beginning of the school year. So we're working towards having those pieces ready. In addition to the information that's going to come out at administrator days, we're also going to have a number of vignettes that are going to tackle specific things. So one of them will be about psychometrics and test design. One will be about the reports and data. One will be around the platform and how test management works and all of those types of things, so that you have access to those. We're also going to do a short 3 to 5 minute piece that you could share with all teachers, and supporting resources with that. We know time is super valuable. You're going to have to make decisions about how much time you spend at the beginning of the year. We're not mandating anything or anything like that. We're just trying to provide resources so that you have the things you need to be able to share with teachers. We're going to post all of this information so that it's easily accessible online. So if you have people that want to dig in deeper, they would be able to do that if you point them in that direction. And so really to try to make it, but we're also not stopping there. We're also trying to work on pieces for parents and for the larger community, trying to make resources that you could use to put word out about what is going on with this through-year adaptive or Nsgas growth transition. Also important, really important to note that and this is one of our strengths in Nebraska, is our certified facilitator program around professional learning. So once again, we have 72 certified facilitators across the state in ESUs and in districts. Those individuals will continue to get training around the transition, the differences between the MAP growth data and the Nsgas growth data, trying to make sure that there is support for interpreting data and reports as we move forward, and any of the new tools that we have for you. And so we're really trying to make sure that those certified facilitators are supported in this transition so that they can support districts and districts generally, and schools and teachers all across the state, right, as we move forward. So trying to make sure that they feel that they're supported in having the resources they need to help with this transition as well. And the great thing is that system is already in place. We already have a system to communicate that training and those resources out to people all across the state that then can deliver to other districts or the educators within the districts that they work for. And so that's a positive thing. We had a planning meeting just the other day where we were trying to determine what should be offered next year and how we do move into next year with all this transition stuff coming up. And so really trying to be thoughtful about how we support districts as we move forward into this transition. Real quickly, I want to talk about the ongoing work that's been happening, just to kind of give you a sense that we haven't just been standing still all of this time, right? We've been doing some continuous work kind of behind the scenes. Overall, during the pandemic, we've tried to stay out of the way for the most part and let you do your thing. And so so some of this work has been ongoing. Some of it's been very difficult to do, obviously, with some of the health guidelines and everything in place, but a lot of this is continued, right? So really, some of the research that's happening behind the scenes. So this pilot, the phase 1 pilot this spring, we're still trying to establish that statistical link between MAP growth and Nsgas scales. So we understand that the psychometricians within NWA have been running all kinds of simulation and examining all kinds of models to see what is the best way to support the information that comes back to districts during each of these administrations. We're going to have some pieces to show you very soon and get some feedback on those. And so that's one of our intentions here coming up. Like I said, the phase 1 pilot is really that transition point. It really is not Nsgas summative, and it's really not Nsgas growth. It's really just a transition point. Like I said, we tried to minimize it, but the alignment studies that are happening with it, the understanding how those banks work in relationship, the item banks work in relationship. We're also working on a range ALD review and tool, right? So those achievement level descriptors. So Nebraska's educators have had input into a new tool that's being developed. We're still kind of vetting this and providing input into this ALD-based tool and the information that will come from it. So we're hopeful to be able to roll out more information about that as we move forward. It's a learning continuum-like, and should continue to support moving forward. It is a new tool, right? So it's in addition to the other types of tools and reports that have been available through map growth, and will be available with Nsgas growth moving forward. The Walton Family Foundation has, NWA got a grant from them to do work around better reporting, right? So reports moving forward, Nebraska families, parents have had some input into this as we move forward in the pandemic. They've been working with Learning Heroes, which is a group that specializes in getting feedback from parents and trying to inform what reports look like, so that parents feel like they're getting the information they need in a way that makes sense to them. So we've been participating in that work on an ongoing basis, which continues to be a very positive thing. Parents feeling like they're getting the information they need, but not feeling overwhelmed is always important. And it's a difficult balance to hit. So kind of closing message here. So I told you up front, I didn't have all the answers today. Hopefully you feel like you know the path forward now, and how you're going to get some of those answers with some of these regular updates as we go forward. I think it's important for you to know that we do hear your concerns, and we try to adjust and respond to those as quickly as possible. So as you voice those concerns, we're working to get you answers. Those are not always easy to get immediately. Sometimes it takes longer than you or I would like, but we do work very hard at it and trying to make sure that happens. We know you value map growth, right? 86% of our districts were using map growth. Before our contract with NWA, I personally helped move 2 districts to use map growth when I was in the field myself. And so we're working to provide and improve on that data and making sure that you're not going to be missing something that you need moving forward. I know I still have to prove that to you, but we are working on getting those answers very soon, so you know what you're going to have. If we have something that you're not going to have and it's really important to you, you're going to be able to let us know that, and we're going to try to adjust moving forward. We acknowledge that you need resources. It's very evident that people are way more focused on wanting answers around Nsgas growth, which I understand, than I thought they would be. Earlier in the year, like I said, we tried to stay out of your way, maybe too much, because you had principals in your districts, you had teachers in your districts asking what's going to happen, right, as we go down this path. So trying to make sure you have the resources so that you have an understanding and that you're able to share within your districts or your ESU areas, regions, as we move forward. And we do value your input. Keep asking questions and challenging us to do better on a constant basis. I appreciate those questions that come in. The longer I've been at the department, the harder it is for me to put on my district hat. I acknowledge that. Those of you that know my wife know that she doesn't let me get too far away from that, because she comes home from the building every day and reminds me exactly what it's like to work in a pandemic, and with educators every day. And so I get that constant reminder. So that's not too far away, but it does get harder every year for me to do that. So please keep asking your questions and challenging us. We want you to do that. It's going to make the system better overall. So I don't know if I got anywhere close to achieving what I actually wanted to do today. You will be the ones that are the judge of that. I'm going to let Trudy kind of go through the questions and the comments. Thank you for sticking with me through that information. Hopefully I can answer many of your questions if you have the questions that you have. I'm going to get a drink of Pepsi. I'm going to get rid of that screen there, and then we'll answer some questions.
Okay, Jeremy, I have them collected here for you.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Will Nscas growth be on the map reports? So in other words, if we test students in grades K2, then we switch to grades 3-8. Will the reading and math data be shown on the student report or family report?
That is a really good question, and I don't have an answer to that. That's a great one. We'll take that forward. Thank you.
Do you know if the data will be compiled?
If the data will be compiled, I don't know that either, right? So trying to help with that transition from map growth to Nscas growth is something we're committed to. I don't know the specifics behind that. Those are good questions for us to get into with NWA.
Okay, next question. Will we get results on students for the science field test as well? I responded no. And
No.
then the follow-up question was year 2, will we get science results so our teachers can compare?
Yeah, so fully operational. So this is a field test this year for science. We never provide data back for field tests, right? Because the point of a field test is we're testing the test, testing the items and the tasks within the test. That was probably really clear last year that you weren't going to get results, but that is true this year as well. You will not get results for the Nscas science field test. For this year, yes, next year you will get results. Those results are going to come back later than you want, right? Because we have to do standard settings. So that goes into the summer. So you're not going to get like immediate results and those types of things, but you will get results to know where you are in science at that time. We've also, we told everybody this last year, but we're going to do that again. If there's anything, we are going to do some pretty high level analysis of that science information. If we think there are takeaways that districts and the state needs to know, we're going to put that together in a memo or a report or something to put that out there. If there are things that we see that are patterns that we think you need to know, right? But you do not get results from the science field test.
Okay, will Writ scores be available directly after the Nscas test, or will data be sent out later?
It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about the Nscas phase 1 pilot, it will come out in the Writ scores will be available in the data file when it's provided to you. The intention for Nscas growth when we get there for the pilot next winter and next spring is that you would have it in the same type of time frame you typically get map growth information. So within like 24 hours, whatever that reporting turnaround time is, but almost immediately.
Okay, the scores, we will get our Writ and percentile, no longer the scale score.
The Writ is a scale score, right? So that's the same. You're not for the pilot this spring, you're not going to get a scale score based on the scale, the previous Nscas summative scale. No, because that scale has to change because of the number of questions and those types of things. So you're going to get an estimated for the pilot this year, you're going to get an estimated achievement level. So developing on track CCR benchmark, or you're going to get a Writ score, which would be a scale score.
Okay. Will these Nscas growth results be used to set accountability thresholds for future AQuest ratings?
Yes, right. So as we move into Nscas growth, we'll be re-establishing. So I didn't get into accountability a whole lot here because I know all of this impacts that. We are going to have to update the accountability system to reflect the changes in the assessment system. That is a must. There's no way just to tweak it a little bit and have that go forward. So Lane is in the process of putting together resources and trying to get feedback on how we move forward. One of the nice things is we're going to be able to calculate growth in multiple ways. And so that'll be a highlight of the updated accountability system. As you probably know, the EBA is moving out of the accountability system. So there's some changes there. We are not doing, so we didn't do accountability determinations for last school year, obviously, because we didn't have test scores. We are not doing accountability determinations for this year as well, because that doesn't make sense in this year, quite frankly. So how we move forward is being worked on right now. Lane will be much better prepared to talk about that, I think, as we move forward. But I've seen a couple proposals in the last week or so about bringing stakeholders in to make sure there's input into those accountability, the updated accountability system, and how we move forward with that.
Will the results from Nsgas growth pilot be able to inform Irips? IRIPS.
Yes, that is the intention. And that was a question that we got very early on. And that is the intention, is that for this would be a test that you could use for the Nebraska Reading Act. Yes.
Do we know the winter window for the pilot?
It is December through mid-January. I don't have specific dates for you yet, but it will be before and after the winter break.
Okay, I'm curious if our tax psychometricians support using spring 2021 results for future accountability ratings.
Spring 2021 for accountability ratings. They, you know what, they haven't weighed in on that. Yeah, so we have a TAC meeting coming up this spring. They're going to weigh in on all of those pieces. So we're definitely going to get input on how we use that information. Yeah. And I should say that spring 21 and future ratings. So if I answer difficult, so the results from this spring aren't going to be used in accountability. So if I answered incorrectly before, the results of spring 22 will be used in accountability. There's no we won't be using accountability, this spring's results for accountability for growth or anything like that. That would not be okay because of the year we're in. So if I answered that wrong before, I apologize. I misunderstood the question earlier if that was the case.
Will map growth, I think she means, will Nscas growth also provide student percentiles?
Yes.
Not sure about double testing students in what will hopefully be the year we are coming out of a global pandemic. However, we also won't know if the new NSCAS reports will meet our needs either at all or for all students. That's a comment.
Yeah, so we're going to try to make sure that what you're going to get from that is as clear as possible. What the reporting and everything, all the pieces you're going to get from Nscas growth, so that you can make an informed decision. I can understand that some people will say, no matter what you tell me until I see it, I'm not going to trust it, and I get that. That's a choice that districts are going to have to make, right? And I can't make that for people. I get why you would want to not test double in that time. And I would also get why you might choose to do that, and we'll support you either way. We won't criticize you for either decision, but we'll do our best to make sure you understand what you're going to get ahead of time so you can make the most informed decision that you can.
When districts are trying to determine if we should test both map growth and Nscas or just the Nscas, we need to have an idea of how long this testing system will be around and when we can get timely results from the assessments.
Absolutely. I agree with that. The intention is to get those results just like you get map growth results now, right? The same type of time frame. That is the intention, is that you'll get interim results almost immediately like you do with map growth. How long the system is in place, my intention is not to change things ever again. But you know that how politics and all of those things work, right? So I can't say for sure. Our hope is that this system is everything that we hope it is, and that we intend it to be, and that we can keep this system for a long time. I can't control everything. And so, but the intention is that we would leave things alone for a good long time after this. That's probably not good enough answer for you, but that's the best I got.
Will NSCAS 2022-23 science summative still be given for grades 5 and 8 only?
Yes. We're not planning on changing what grades we're testing in science.
How closely linked will Nebraska Nsgas growth, the Nebraska standards, be to map growth indicators? I'm wondering about the comparisons between Nsgas growth scores and NWEA national norms.
Yeah, so the statistical links between those are pretty easy to do. The Nsgas growth bank, right, is made up of items from Nebraska, right, Nsgas items and map growth items. There is enough overlap between those systems to be able to give really solid data around growth norms and national percentiles and those types of pieces, we believe. There's no reason to believe that those aren't going to be solid in the way that we make those calculations at that time. I've had nobody talk to me in a way that makes me doubt that, but we can definitely take that. There's a lot of things like that. I get psychometrically, those of you that are much more measurement driven than I am, and understand that stuff even at a deeper level than I do, that you might question those, and we need to provide additional evidence of those pieces. I talk to NWA regularly about that there are some people within the state that are asking those deep psychometric questions and want to know how we make those calculations, and how solid those are. And we are going to try to show you and reassure you about those scores that we're putting out there for you.
Will map growth be paid for by NDE in the 22-23 school year?
So map growth and all of the, no, that is not the intention at the time. It would be for us to not pay for map growth in grades 3 through 8, except for science, if you want that. That is, so what I'll say is that's based on successfully being able to do Nsgas growth in 21-22, right? So assume we're successful and that all works. In our view, Nsgas growth and map growth would be redundant at that point in time. You're going to get the same type of information from both of them. There's no reason for us to pay for them. I don't control what you do with your money in your district. You could do a private contract with them and do that again. I would tell you that you're going to be double testing your kids a lot, and that you probably shouldn't do that. But until we prove to you that you're getting the same type of information and you feel confident in that, you might be worried about it. So we have to prove that to you. So we'll see. But the intention would be not to spend that money. No.
Okay, so we're going completely away from legacy NSCAS scale scores and using only Writ scores in NSCAS growth?
Yes, I believe so. There would be no reason to use multiple scales in that case, right? So when we set the cut scores, we would be using Writ scores to do that, I believe. Once again, it's a good question. Maybe I'm making an assumption there, but I wouldn't know why you would need two different scales.
Okay, how will NSCAS growth reports compare to map growth reports?
Yes, they will compare, and that's the question, right? So I don't know the answer fully, and that is the next topic of conversation around So the next advisory committee meeting that we have coming up is going to be about data and reports. Hopefully we'll have some of those answers then, and then we'll be able to turn those around to the rest of the field at that point in time. The intention is that you would be able to use those results in very much the same way, and that they would be comparable.
Okay, any idea about timelines for testing windows, working on calendars for 21, 22 now?
Yeah, so the testing windows, so for the winter pilot, it is going to be December through mid-January. Like I said, I don't have a specific date for that at this point in time. And then the spring window, that one is a little bit more difficult. We haven't had the discussions about that yet. We could see that we would, so some districts are going to choose to do map growth and the Nscas growth in the spring of that year. And so we want to be thoughtful about that, about when we establish that window. It's going to be close to the same time period, but I can't guarantee it's the same, because I'm going to, that's one of the things that I'm going to take to the advisory group and ask what they think moving forward about those windows actually at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year, to try to establish those. And so I don't have specifics at this point in time, but I would say similar in that nature. Although if you're not doing map growth and Nscas, right, summative, and you're only doing one test, we might be able to adjust that window slightly to meet your needs a little bit better when you would like to see that. So if you're thinking about one window instead of having to do both of those tests, I could see us choosing to use a little bit different window at the end of the year than we have been doing.
Okay, there's a phase 1 pilot this spring. There's nothing in the fall. There's more pilot in the winter. And then what happens in the following spring?
So next spring, right, not this coming spring of 22, the Nscas is operational, and to the point that we will be able to determine proficiency in that time. So the students will take the test in the spring of 22. If they took the pilot, they'll have a bigger set of data with which to do that, and then we will determine cut scores in the summer of 22. So you'll have proficiency levels for the spring of 22, for the year of 22, 21, 22.
Okay, I think, whoa, we have more here. I was just going off of
I can take one, Trudy. Well, do
Okay.
we have something like test whiz coming out for districts?
No, we're not. So I'm probably not ready to really announce the new formative supports and where we're going with that. The feedback was overwhelming about moving away from that type of support because it was not sustainable. And we weren't certain that we were able to keep it. So we're moving a different direction in the formative area and trying to support districts in a different way. There's not going to be a replacement for test whiz.
When will we get information about COVID waivers for the Nscas testing this year?
That is a really good question. It is sitting on draft on my desktop right now. We're very close to having it done. I need to have a few more people review it again, and then I was going to get a couple districts to look at it for me, and then we'll be ready to send it out. It's about 3 pages. I think I have hit a good spot, or we've hit a good spot between ease of use and accountability, in the way, not like AQuest accountability determinations, but making sure that districts have done their due diligence to try to test all students. I'll kind of get a feedback on that probably when we send it out. And like I said, I want to get a couple district people to look at it for me. And then I will send that out. So I imagine it will be before the end of next week. as soon as possible. That's the next big thing I need to get off, get done and get out there to you. Understood that. I understand that.
Okay. When will this year's ELA math pilot scores come out?
I don't have a date for that. That's probably on a schedule. I don't know if it's a TBD date or if it is set in stone yet. Yeah, I don't know that. I'll have to get that answer for you.
Okay. Is the science field test administered through the same NWA platform?
Yes, it is.
Will the data file we get from the Nsgas pilot this year be similar to what we may get going forward from Nsgas growth, or will it be its own standalone data file just for the spring pilot administration?
So it's going to look almost exactly like the data files you're used to, right? I mean, there's going to be a couple extra columns and those types of things. So it's going to look more like the Nscas data than probably where we're going with Nscas growth, I would say, because I think there's probably more information in like a map growth data file. So it is not, we're not trying to make an attempt to establish what that data file looks like going forward at this time. That won't be available until later on, I would say. So no, more like old Nscas summative as opposed to where we're going.
Okay. I'm going to answer this one. With being in our year 3 of our continuous school improvement cycle, do we need to continue and do maps so we have our significant data? From my understanding, we'll need to do both to have enough data. As long as you have, this is my opinion, Jeremy, step in. As long as you have 3 consecutive years, I think you're good.
Well, and the Writ score should be comparable. So you should be able to continue to see comparable data moving forward. So you should have usable data for continuous improvement regardless. In this case, if you're from map to Nscas growth.
Okay. How many years can we expect the system to be in place?
I think you already answered that one. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be able to use Nscas growth next school year for Irips, and I think you answered that one too.
Mm-hmm.
You can use that, right?
Yep.
Yes. Will the winter window always span December and January?
I don't know that yet. Still waiting on feedback back from the psychometricians and everything. That would be our intention, I believe, at this time to allow districts to take it before or after that winter break. But I'm waiting on some recommendations from the psychometricians and then probably weigh in from advisory groups before we make a final decision in that area.
Okay, with the window spanning the winter break, will the terminated test due to time span be adjusted so that doesn't happen?
I have no idea. We had that question before and I don't have an answer to it yet. I know in map growth, if you have too long between when a student starts and finishes, there's that basically it times out and the student has to start over. So we're going to have to make some engagement rules about that. I don't know at this time so we'll get an answer for you on that, but it might be a while before that one's determined, to be honest.
Okay, will all Nscas growth training go through certified facilitators, and will certified facilitators still receive map growth training for those grades still using map growth? Will we still have support for regular map growth?
Yeah, so we're planning on continuing support for map growth for those off-grade levels. And quite frankly, we intend for that support to be very similar to Nscas growth. So there shouldn't be any reason why certified facilitators shouldn't be well-versed in both of those tests and be able to support that work. Not all of it. So what I'd say is certified facilitators will have a lot of information, but we will be offering additional trainings and those types of things to everybody, right? So it won't be solely through certified facilitators. They'll be able to go deeper and give more intensive types of training. There'll be any training that we need to do for everybody, we will continue to do in that way, right? So we want everybody to feel supported, that you don't always have to go through a certified facilitator. They'll be able to get into that information at a deeper level with you.
Okay. Will there be a session that speaks to accommodations?
Yes, there definitely will. Like I said, we're gonna do the accessibility review and update this summer. So I don't know exactly when that session will be, but obviously we'll want to put something together to talk about the results of that review and update process. And we're talking accommodations, linguistic supports, universal supports. The whole accessibility manual will be revised. I don't know how much it will. That'll be determined by the people that are involved in that. So, but we will definitely come back and have a conversation about it. What you would expect overall for accommodations is that we're going to have to come to some consensus about what that looks like, and there'll be more standardization. But we want everybody to weigh into that and to have a voice in that as we make those determinations. There's some things that we can change, some things that we can't, because federal law does it have impacts on that and says some of what we can and can't do too. So we'll take all that into consideration during that review and update process.
How will Nsgas growth be rostered in the system, and what impacts on other grade levels still using map growth?
Yeah, so that has been an interesting journey. The intention right now is that we would be able to roster map growth and Nsgas growth in the same way. We are working right now to provide an option for auto rostering that would come through the advisor system and then directly to NWEA. We know that many of our larger districts, some of our smaller districts are already doing auto rostering. I think we haven't come to a final decision on this, but I think basically we're going to leave a lot of the options that are currently available in place is probably the direction we're going. So we're probably not messing with that a whole lot, but we are going to try to provide the majority of your districts that aren't doing auto roster processes a different choice than doing that manually going forward. So stay tuned to that. That was pretty vague answer, I would say, because I'm not committed to all of that because we're still working through that process. We brought in a stakeholder group to talk about auto rostering and trying to change that to one solid way. Had a lot of concerns about that, and so trying to maintain some district choice moving forward. We should have more information soon. We have another meeting tomorrow with the planning group there, and hopefully we'll have a full answer and a committed answer soon.
Okay. Will an official writing assessment be brought back?
I don't think so. I don't see us bringing back an official writing assessment. I think, as a high school English teacher myself, I think writing's super important. I think we should still be spending a lot of time and effort on it, but I don't see it coming back anytime soon. Nobody's really calling for it. The cost and the logistics of it are pretty prohibitive to bring it back at this point in time. I wouldn't mind, to tell you the truth, but I just don't see it happening in the short term.
Okay. Has there been a determination about whether there can be a differentiation between how grades use the combination of, I think it got cut off.
The combination of growth and Nsgas.
Thank you.
Say that again.
Has there been a determination about whether there can be a differentiation between how grades use a combination of map growth and Nsgas?
I don't understand that question. Can somebody rephrase it for me?
I think there'll be no differentiation because Nsgas, the summative and the interim will now be one.
Right. If that's what's being asked, yeah. Okay, let's move on. And if somebody wants to
Okay.
redo that, we can look at it again.
Okay, test administration question. Will students have tickets? Will setting up test sessions look more like map growth testing or like Nsgas summative?
Yeah, so we're trying to make determinations on that right now. As we're making those determinations, we're trying to make them as easy as possible. We understand that Nsgas growth or map growth is much easier to do that work in, but we haven't determined all of those points. So when I talk about test management, we'll have a test management session coming up here, hopefully in the next couple of months, to try to answer some of those questions. It's very clear to us that we need to make it easier. I don't know what that means though, right? So I don't know if we're going to have tickets. I don't know what the limitations are or those types of things. But I do hear multiple people telling me frequently to make it easier. And so that's what I'm trying to do. So hopefully we'll have more details about that coming up. I don't have them today though.
Okay, will we be using one NWEA platform for both map growth and Nsgas growth or separate like it has been in past years?
To be determined, to tell you the truth, about what that looks like moving forward. Right now, they kind of sit in two different platforms, although there's some kind of similarities between the two of them, and they're highly correlated. There'll be more on that soon, hopefully.
Has there been a determination about whether there can be differentiation between how grades students test? The combination, I think we answered that. Has there been a determination about whether there can be differentiation between how grades or students test, i.e. the combination of growth and Nsgas? Still not. Okay.
Jeremy?
Yeah.
Jeremy, that was my question. It was it was stupid the way I wrote it. I'm sorry. My
Oh,
question
no.
was I had asked you earlier this year, for example, if when we get to the 3 times a year testing,
Mhm.
will we have an option of saying like this grade level will do 3 times a year and this grade level is going to do Nsgas just winter or just winter and spring or fall and spring? You know, can there be differences within a school district as to when we do Nsgas? Which of those times?
Yeah. So so what I know right now is that Nsgas growth in the fall and spring is going to be required, because otherwise we can't capture the growth pieces. The other part for winter is yet to be determined, right? So I think that's still up in the air for right now.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, this is Maggie.
Yeah.
I see since we have such a large group of captured audience here, a lot of people have already dropped off. I need to make a plug for this testing season. I've only heard from 15 districts in regards to any exempt students because due to the paper pencil. And so I just want to make a plug to please send me your exempt student ID numbers and the reason why they are exempt. Thank you.
Okay, Nsgas growth test, item banks, grade level content, and map growth items outside of grade. At one point, this model was coined minimally adaptive, not fully adaptive. Clarify, please. Is it minimally adaptive or fully adaptive?
So this spring,
Nsgas growth.
So this spring is fully adaptive, and Nsgas growth will be fully adaptive. Absolutely.
Okay, do we know when the NSCAS advisory meeting info, has that been sent yet?
No, I have not sent the invitation for that yet. No.
Okay. Will districts be able to use NSCAS growth assessments outside the test windows? For example, if we would like to gather information when a new student enrolls.
So my understanding is you shouldn't need to, because that score should follow. I know that the amount of time that it takes for that is usually prohibitive in about, how quickly you get that information. We're trying to make the system so it is much more responsive to transfers and those types of things. I don't think so, but it's something that we can look into.
Is there a plan to ever do NSCAS growth science?
To do through your adaptive science?
Yes.
Not at this time. That test is quite a bit, functions quite a bit differently. The model's quite a bit different because of the tasks and those types of things. And the amount of items you would need in Nscas growth for science type of bank is just probably too many years out to get there. I won't say it could never happen if but it is quite a few years out if we'd get to that point.
Will we still be able to use school norms that are nationally based for NSCAS growth?
I believe so, yes.
Can we consider allowing students to be assigned to more than one testing session for NSCAS growth, more like map growth than like Nsgas summative?
Yeah,
that will save so much pain. Okay.
Yeah, that was, I don't know the answer to that. That is one of those considerations, right, that we're thinking about for test management. That would make it easier to get that testing done and everything. We always have to weigh the risks of those things versus the ease. But like, once again, we're trying to move towards that ease of use and piece as much as possible, but I don't have an answer for that right now.
Okay. Could we consider dropping the writing from ACT?
Could we consider it? Yeah. We require a new standard setting and those types of things to happen. So I don't know. It could be considered. I don't hear a lot of push for that. If you have reasons or thoughts about why we should do that, drop me a note, let me know in an email or something about that. But there's no, I've had people ask me that before, but I don't see a lot of push for that. I think there's certain value for our students and for our districts in that information. I know that that makes that test a little long. But I don't see that changing in the short term. But once again, we try to listen to what people are telling us. So we could consider it if we hear enough about that.
Okay. Will there be an option similar to MAP screening tests?
It's a good question. I don't know that. We're not planning on doing screening tests. Whether the current screening tests are available or not, that's a good question.
Will there be an, I said that one already. This is like, sorry. For 2022 and 23, which scores will be reported for accountability? Will it be the spring session or a student's best score of the 3 interim tests?
So it's not either. It's not a best score or an interim score. It's a summative proficiency score. So we'll take all of the data from the 3 times of year and then make a determination about proficiency. So it's not just a single score. It's information and evidence from the whole year to determine proficiency, not just a single session.
Let's see. Can we stop this train? I'm hearing that some superintendents are expressing concerns about this move to through-year assessment.
Yeah, trains can always be stopped. It's just a matter of how many, feet it takes before you can get it stopped, right? So I would say we're pretty far down this track already. I'm hearing some of the same things. I often wonder when I hear from superintendents about how well informed they are about what we are, where we're going, and what we're doing. I often ask that question. It's interesting because I don't have a whole lot of superintendents talking to me. They talk over my head, so they don't send me anything or those types of things. So they should feel free to contact me if they have concerns. This is, I get that there is trepidation going down this path. If at any point that I felt like this is not going to work or we have major concerns, I'd pull the plug on it myself. I get that there is concern. I do, absolutely. Change is concerning. I get that you don't have the evidence to be convinced yet that this is going to work in a way that you will be comfortable with. We still owe that to you. I'm working hard to try to get it for you. So trains always can be stopped. It's just a matter of, what happens in the meantime. So you can keep asking questions and those types of things. I don't intend to stop the train myself at this point in time unless I get other information that would cause me to do that.
Okay, NSCAS growth will be both criterion and norm referenced.
Yes, the summative proficiency scores will be criterion based. You'll be able to also get normed reference information from the interim tests. Yes.
Okay. In a follow-up to Dr. Mueller's question and for my own clarification, if NSCAS growth is fully adaptive, then are we to assume that all students at a grade level will receive a fixed number of the same Nebraska grade level standard questions as a part of the test items each student receives?
No, you shouldn't assume that, right? So there has to be a threshold, right? So the question is what is enough evidence for us to base a proficiency score on? And in the past fixed form world, that was fairly easy to do because all the students were taking the same test. As we moved to adaptive, students started taking different tests, right? And so we're able to still determine proficiency based on their patterns of what items they get correct, what items they get wrong. So the question for us moving forward is, how much evidence is enough for grade level determination, right? So so just for instance, if there's a 5th grade student that has shown us for all year long, or even multiple years at some point in time, that they're below grade level, how many questions at grade level do we need before we can determine whether that student is proficient or not? I would argue that if there is a pattern of that and we check one more time, that we don't need a lot of additional evidence in the spring of that 5th grade year to suggest the student isn't going to be proficient. That is a completely different type of system than we have currently for summative determinations. What I would like us to be able to do and to be able to show the Department of Education federally is that we have the evidence that we need to be able to determine that proficiency, and we don't have to spend long at that grade level to do it unless the student is in that band of being at grade level, and that we can focus on growth on where they're going and where they are, as opposed to having to be in one specific band for so much time of a test. Right. And so I'm actually challenging the psychometricians to say, when is enough, and how much evidence do you need to suggest? What I would say is you always want to give students a chance to show what they know at grade level, but how much is enough before you go to where they are, as opposed to that grade level material. I don't know I don't know. Did that answer your questions, or did I confuse the issue even more?
Jeremy. This is Julie Sauer. I appreciate the follow-up. Thank you.
Okay.
What is the blueprint referring to in the table of specifications?
The blueprint, so table specifications and blueprint are synonymous in my opinion. They're essentially the same things, right? So the right now the blueprint is the table of specifications. That's kind of what is being used for a student that is right at grade level, right? They're in grade level time. They're going to see a lot of questions that are at grade level and would fit right into that table of specifications. If a student is above that and has a history of being above that, they're going to get minimal amounts or the toughest questions at that grade level. If they're below grade level, they're going to get the easiest questions. But if they can't show that they're there, we're going to switch them back to where they are pretty quickly and then try to get and then allow them to show us if they've grown or not.
Okay, I know you answered a question about using Nsgas growth for Irips next school year. I want to make sure if our district decides to do the winter Nsgas growth next year, that we will be able to get data back in a timely enough manner and that there will be cut scores in place to use those data for Irips.
That's a good point. You know, so that I guess that what I would say is that our intention is that NSCAS growth could be used for those. We're not going to have cut scores in for the winter pilot, right? That just, we can't. You can't have cut scores before you give the test. So in that way, now if there's Writ scores that we could use, you know, those Writ scores are going to be good. So I don't know if there's a threshold that we could set or say if that Writ score is at that level, that might be a little risky. I'll have to get into that more.
Okay, comment. Thanks, Jeremy and NDE team for your efforts. It's clear you are all working to try to meet multiple groups' needs as best as possible, given an ever-moving target based on influences outside your control. Okay, thank you for that. What does fully adaptive mean? What is the bottom and what is the top?
Yeah, so we've been having those conversations about if we put limits on how far a student can go outside of grade level. We haven't made that determination yet. What I'd say is that right now we have the ability to go just like map growth does, and to you know, way above and you know, quite a ways below, depending on what you want. We asked the question of the advisory group last time. I think they needed more information to give us good input on that, about that question. There's a couple of schools of thought. Some would say we should let kids go as far as they can, with like what map growth does right now. And some say that you should put a little bit more control on that because there's no reason for a third grader to do trigonometry questions, you know, that they've never had access to before. I don't have the answer, but we will have to figure that out for you. Yeah.
Okay, you said summative will be criterion referenced information, but you then suggest the test are interims with norm reference details. So is summative evidence across all three assessments, but didn't you say winter was optional? So then will it be only 2 tests and not 3 weighing in on the summative criterion?
So it will be as much information as we have access to determine the summative score, right? So if a student takes 1 test in the spring, because they moved into the state, we'll be able to determine proficiency based on that 1 test. Their test would look very different than a student that has fall and winter results as well, because they'll only have 1 time to gather evidence to make that determination. So we will use all the evidence from that year that we have to make a summative determination. That is the intent. We'll have to have rules about what we use and what we don't, right? It's going to be particularly complicated, but we hope to provide transparency in how that decision's made as we get to make those decisions.
Okay, so basically a follow-up. Will the spring test take longer for students who come into the district from out of state and don't have previous scores?
Yeah, very possibly, right? So a student that does not have any previous material, that test might look a little bit longer, so we get enough evidence to make a determination. We've talked about having error expectations about how small the error gets before we can stop that test and those types of things. Once again, not all those rules have been determined and everything, but absolutely the test of a student that does not have previous data would definitely look different than a student that does.
I believe this question was skipped. I'm sorry. How will proficiency be determined for schools with a high mobility rate? Will a student's previous scores follow them? What about out-of-state students or newcomers? You sort of answered that one, but
yeah, so it really depends on, so those are accountability rules, and those will have to be determined with the accountability advisory group and those types of things about how they determine those scores, right? So if, for instance, if you had a student between winter and spring, would that accountability score of growth go into the system? Or do you have to have them for the full academic year and those types of things? So those are accountability decisions, and those would still have to be updated for the new system. So I don't have answers for those, but it's a good question to pose for accountability purposes.
okay, and somewhat related, what about mobility? And if a student doesn't complete all of the tests, how will this impact them and the district?
Yeah, once again, those are, it depends on how much information they have, how much evidence, do they have enough evidence to make a summative determination and not. They're right now, right? So you have to a student has to be in your district for the full academic year for them to be counted in the accountability scores. You could do something similar to that. That rule could stand, and there'd be good reason for that. You also could change it about some of the growth pieces, because we're going to have access to different growth information. I could see those rules maybe change some. So I don't know. That's why we'll have to review the accountability system and update the accountability system to take the new system, the new assessment system into account as we're making determinations for that. But we don't have the answers for that yet.
Okay, it seems like in an effort to provide less testing, we have ended up with more, where a district may decide or want to do MAP and Nsgas growth in all 3 sessions for a total of 6 tests instead of what used to be 4. When do you feel like a district could start trusting Nsgas growth data in place of MAP and thereby reduce testing? The winter of 2021, question mark.
The winter of 2021, maybe. I can't speak to when a district is going to feel comfortable, right? So what I know is that some people are going to want different levels of evidence to feel comfortable. I would argue the point that there might be a temporary increase in some testing for some students, but overall there's going to be a decrease. I think you're right, is that districts are going to have to make that decision about when they feel comfortable. And I'm going to work hard. We're going to work hard to make districts feel as comfortable as they can, as soon as they can, so they can not double test. But I understand right now you don't have the evidence to make that determination on whether you would do that or not. I would say right now, most people would say, if you heavily rely on that information right now, your plan is to probably double test until I meet that and we meet that burden of proof to say, no, I'm comfortable now. This, based on what I see, I'm going to be comfortable. I don't know where that is. I could imagine that it's going to be, 5 years before some of people in the state are going to feel comfortable. I hope that's not true, because that would be terrible for students. But I know some of you are like your MAP growth results. You feel comfortable. They're not as perfect as you want to believe. No test is perfect, and no test will ever be perfect. But you know, that burden is on us right now to be able to make you feel comfortable. And I understand that. That's not a minimal type of burden that's on us right now. So we'll have to see when that happens, and I imagine it'll be at different times for different districts.
Will the process for transferring scores from one district to another be more feasible than what is required for map growth?
God, I hope so.
Okay. Do you know if Nscas growth will provide, in addition to the overall RIT, the goal areas RIT scores as well?
I don't know exactly what those will be, but it's our intention that you would be able to create growth goals with your students in very much the same way that you do that now with map growth. So I don't want to say yes or no because I don't have the answer, but that, you know, we want you to be able to do a lot of the same things you're doing right now with these new scores. So.
Okay, we've reached the end of the questions in chat.
If anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question or make a comment, obviously we're saving all of these questions. So the ones that I didn't actually answer or, you know, I dodged as much as I could, we can provide those answers to you as quickly as possible. You know, it is not easy to get the answers because we're talking about an extremely complex system. That would be true whether it was this model or a different model. So we appreciate the questions. Yeah, the rapid guessing, D, I'm not sure about that. That would be our hope that we could be able to roll that rapid guessing piece over. But I'm not sure about that. You know, the rapid guessing is a relatively new piece for map growth, and it was based on a lot of map growth data. I don't know if that map growth data is compatible enough for us just to roll the same set of rules over or not. I get that is something that's been very valuable to districts in the way that they maybe require a retake or something like that from a student. So I get that you'd want that to be retained, but I don't have an answer about that for right now.
Okay. Laura, you mentioned Edmentum. Do you have a question around that?
The reason I asked Jeremy,
those third-party systems, right? And
the reason I asked you, Jeremy, is because really the scores that are used, it's not so much the data file as it uses the Writ score and the goal areas. So
Okay.
if I knew that those were in existence, I can create anything I needed. That's all I was asking, because it'll help drive decisions for whether we do pilot or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are those next answers that I'm trying to get for you as quickly as possible. I'm trying to get what's going to be.
I keep harassing you, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's not those. You need those answers, and I get that completely, because that's what's going to, knowing what's in that data file, for instance, is huge for you feeling comfortable. There's other things that I need to do as well about how those scores are determined and all of those types of things that we owe you as well, and will make you feel comfortable. But I think at a very high level starting place is what data is available. And we need to be able to commit to those things. If we don't know for sure, we need to be honest about that. You know, so, and then we need to figure it out as soon as possible. So I don't mind those types of questions at all. I get why you're asking.
Yeah. Shelley makes the comment, we need that goal area breakdown of the Writ scores. That's the piece of map growth that we use the most to make decisions.
Okay.
You can at least feel good that we all actually used the stuff you provided for us. It's always that.
Yeah, I do. And I know a lot of you use it really well, right? Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I am, if that's it, we'll just stop right there. That was a good hour's worth of peppering there. That was good. I feel like I could go on some of those dating games now. If I wasn't happily married.
If you weren't happily married, yeah.
Perfect.
Good job.
Just so we're clear. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll be in touch soon with the next one of these, and we'll get the advisory piece going and the next one of these informational sessions set up so it's on your calendar. Okay, thank you.